This show talks about books that feature mental health and mental illness topics. There are many books that include this topic, and my hope is that more and more people know about them because they help to decrease the stigma and help people not feel so alone in their struggle. I am your host, Robin Tamanaha, licensed marriage and family therapist. Joining me today on this episode is my guest, Dr. Jenny Yen. Jenny wrote the children's book, Something Strange Happened in My City. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, Robin.
Hi, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I like my guests to introduce themselves. Would you like to say a few things about yourself for the listeners, like who you are, what you do, or anything else you'd like them to know?
Sure, definitely. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Jenny Yen. I'm a professor at California State University, Fullerton. I've been teaching early childhood education development for more than 20 years. And I typically teach kids child development course 0 through age 8.
That's wonderful. Out of curiosity, what drew you to early childhood studies?
So this is a funny story. I immigrant from Taiwan. When I was in Taiwan, I actually studied business, but I hate it. But as an Asian, you always listen to your parents, right? My father said, this is a good career. Just stay in this, major. You will earn more money. But when I came to the United States, I switched my major right away because I really don't like business, right? So I fell in love with young children. When I look at them, I volunteer at a lab school. I enjoy so much, to interact with the babies. So I decided to change my major, from business to early child education. And when I received my PhD in 1998, my parents traveled from Taiwan to the United States to attend the ceremony. So I told my father, if I listen to you, stick with business, I will just get a master's degree. That's what you want for me to do. That's it. But because early childhood education is something I'm passionate about, so I decided to, pursue the highest degree and ended up teaching that. So I thought it's very important. I do that all the time to my college students. If this is not something you are passionate about, do yourself a favor. Find something else that interests you, motivate you and that will be a career you can do forever. You don't want to drag yourself to your job. You want to enjoy your job every day.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. Thank you for sharing that story. And you being myself too, Asian American, I can definitely relate to that sometimes, when it's like kind of, what the parents are saying, things may be more practical or quote unquote, what they feel maybe more stable or, logical. However, it is so important to find passion. So I'm really, happy that you discovered that.
Yeah, me too.
So let's talk about the book, which I love. I read it. So what led you to create the book?
This is a very good question. Everyone asks the question. So I teach early child education, and this is the story. 9/11, when the attack happened in New York, I was on my way to school and I heard this news. When I arrived school, the school said, okay, close school, everyone just go home. So when I went home, my daughter, 4 years old at that time, she was in tears. She was like terrifying because the grandparents let the TV run the whole time. And she was watching the tower collapse, over and over again. People were crying and then, so upset. And then my mother-in-law was very upset at that time. She was in tears and the grandpa was watching the news and the little one just like stayed in the corner and wondering what happened. So when I arrived home, so she asked me, Mama, what happened? What's going on? With this bad guy going to come to my house? So I looked at her and I was like thinking, how do I explain to a 4-year-old child traumatized by the TV, the media, scenes to explain to her about terrorist attack? Right?
Yeah.
So I decided to use the social story approach. That's a very typical approach happening in spatial education. When kids have special needs, the teacher, parents usually customize a social story, use the child's picture, explain to the child step by step about what to do. So I look at the news, I look at the picture very carefully. I just use the plain PowerPoint and then, insert a picture, explain the situation to my child. And the number one thing I want to do was to reassure my daughter about her safety. And if you study child development, kids are egocentrism at this time, and they are self-centered. So what they really care about is their personal safety. So you have to make sure you reassure them about their safety, and then you can do something else. So I create a story to explain to my daughter, and then I share the book with my students, colleagues, and it just went viral. So got put on many places, university web page, psychological association. So at that time, the book comfort lots of kids about their fear. And this time when I did this book, I have someone email me, so I still have your 9/11 book, and it was amazing. So that was like the story why I, decided and, make the book for kids.
Definitely. You bring up a good point, right? Like they're not like egocentric, like definitely reassuring their personal safety because, to be a young child and, I can imagine like, what, your child went through, with the 9/11, which just being kind of flooded with information, and not knowing what to do with it or, how to make sense of it, is very, very scary, so there is so much importance in personal safety, but like you said, customizing it, for the child, like through special needs or also just, given what is happening and what the incident is. So yeah, so as far as your book, can you briefly describe it? Because it is related to the COVID, right? What we're going through now.
Correct. Yeah. So my families, and friends are in Taiwan, and but I have like a couple friends, relatives actually live in China. So when the virus started in Wuhan, China, I started to pay attention, and I was thinking to write a book about that to explain that to the young children in China and Taiwan. However, at that time, lots of misinformation. And I decided to postpone the book because I don't want to lie to the kids, and I don't want to write a book later to explain to them, that what I said earlier wasn't right. I would rather say I don't know. So when the COVID-19 things, the outbreak happened in Taiwan and China, I didn't make the book happen was because like the information, lots of wrong information, I didn't know what to do. And to write the social story, you have to set your personal feeling aside and just like try to explain to the kids in a logical, the way they can accept. And when I'm very emotional, I cannot write a story either. So for example, some issues like the gun control issue as today, I can't do it. It's too emotional for me to think about how to put it together for young kids. So this is the situation. But when it happened in the United States, I have collected a lot of information. And at that time, the information like clear scientific evidence, show what's the reason situation like that. So I thought, okay, so I can put together a social story and explain that to children ages 3 to 8.
Yeah. And I like that you said social story. Wait, can you just out of curiosity for the listeners, can you kind of explain like what you mean by like social story?
Okay. Yeah. So that's a very good question. Right?
Yeah,
I know. So I said that earlier. So social story, the term originated from special education. So it's a story to teach special need kids how to socialize with people, in their life, like parents, teachers, classmates, etc. So a typical example, for example, a child with special need may have difficulty just like coming to the classroom and then take the jacket off, hand it over, and then walk over to the desk chair, pour it out, and then sit down. Simple tests like that for special need kids, it's so difficult. So a teacher may make such a social story, use the child as an example, take the child's picture, and then step by step, okay, when you walk in, you take off your jacket. And then you walk over to here, and then you put your jacket over here, then you walk over to your desk, and then pour your chair. So step by step, teach the child the process. And with practice, many practice, the child will be eventually learn how to do the task. That's what we call social story. And a lot of, if you look at the lots of psychological, publication, they have a book, especially APA, they imagination publication. They have a lot of collection in the social story kind to explain to kids about like the death, the pets, pass away or nature disaster. So the whole thing is to use a storytelling technique and then to customize the story to comfort the child, explain to the child about the situation and answer their questions. And more importantly, to teach them about strategies, what to do. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for explaining that. Out of curiosity, what kind of, given the, the coronavirus, the COVID,
Yeah.
what kind of maybe possible questions or concerns might kids have, do you think, related to it?
Very good question. So when I wrote the story, I try to put myself in the child's perspective. So I list a whole bunch of questions, and these are the legit questions kids may ask. For example, the child, the first thing they worry, am I gonna get sick? Right? And there is the social distancing. They may wonder, so that means I cannot play with my friends anymore. And also they wonder, like, why can't you just go to the doctor and then have a shot and have medicine, then you are okay, right? So these are the typical questions kids may wonder, they may ask. And then when I wrote the story, I also want to teach them about social distancing because it's a new concept for adults. It's really hard for us to do, to understand. And, if you don't explain to young children, it's even harder. What they care is that, why can I play with my friends? Why can I go out, to the playground? Why can I go to the school? Right? So, this kind of questions I feel like they may ask, and then I just put it in my story. And I also test the story on my friends' children. So when I have this kind of publication, I usually will give it to my friends' kids, 3 to 8, ask them to read the story. What do you think here and there? And, modify the part that I feel like doesn't fit, and then publish that.
Got it. Yeah.
So for example, like the original, the first draft, when I published that, in the book, there's one page that said the parents ask the child, what can you do, to help with COVID-19? So, I say, okay, the child said, I can draw, I can donate toy. And then one of the sentence that I can donate my money from my piggy bank. Right. So for middle class, not a problem. But then I published the book, and then a teacher in Head Start, she said, I love your book, fantastic. That really helped me to explain to kids about it. But there's one part I don't feel comfortable, because for Head Start kids, they really don't have money, to donate, for the situation. So I said, oh, thank you so much. Like, that's my, I didn't pay attention to that. I just assume, take things for granted. I assume everyone can do that, but that's wrong. So I took the sentence off, and then just like make recommendations, say, oh, draw pictures, or, donate your toys, or, storybook. So this can relate to every child.
Yeah. And I like that, you had input from others, it sounds like, but also even just like the initial questions that you had listed. I picture kids like asking that to their parents like multiple times too, cause like just trying to figure it all out and make sense of it. So the questions that you put are great, cause I feel like those are things that their parents are already like hearing like multiple times a week,
Right. So there's another question, like, will more people die? So this is the question I struggle a bit. But then when I look at the news, I feel like it's there. They're going to ask, right? Yeah. If I don't put it there, it's something in their mind. They probably feel like I shouldn't ask. But everyone's thinking about it. When you look at the number, you just feel like even it's a number, but it's so sad, so heavy. Right? Yeah. So as an adult, I'm sure the kids hear that, see that somewhere here and there. Doesn't matter how careful parents are, the child, see that, feel that. And sometimes as adults, we don't say things to kids, but children are very sensitive. There's something called social referencing. They look up to the adults from your body language, from your facial expression. They can sense your emotion. So perhaps you didn't say anything that you are really sad about the death toll for people in New York or COVID-19, but from your interaction with the kids, the child sense that, they feel that, they actually will copy your emotion. So it's better, right? Just say
Yeah.
that. Okay, so like any people die, more people gonna die, and be honest. No one knows, but I really don't know. So be honest with the child so the child can learn from you as a model. It's okay to say, oh, I don't know. My mom did
Mm-hmm.
that, so that's totally fine. So if I don't know anything, that's okay. So you want to do that, be a good model for your kids during this difficult time.
You know, and I'm so glad you said and put it out there that like it's okay to say I don't know, right? Because
Right,
sometimes like especially you know, having like a young child or someone's a parent, like sometimes there's that pull and that want or feel like you need to have all the answers, when really it's okay to not, because there are many times, you know, throughout life where as the child gets older, there's going to be some unknown, or maybe times
right,
where they don't know things right now. And that's an okay experience to have, because it'd be very, very difficult, you know, and I don't know how it would happen, but for every situation in life, for there always to be an answer. Sometimes there just isn't one yet.
right,
And it's okay for them to learn, you know, kind of sitting with that, and like also hearing that from their model, from their
right,
parent or for their caregiver, whoever is, you know, taking care of them. That's good, you know, and that's
right.
actually a positive experience to have, and it's very helpful. Yeah. So I'm just curious. So, you know, you mentioned the like the book is, you know, for specific ages, like 3 to 8.
Uh-huh.
Just out of curiosity, like I'm a heavy book reader, so I know like I read all these different genres, and I kind of know when it comes to children's books, or you know, we have middle grade, you know, for a certain age group too, like how there's different like brackets, like when it comes to age ranges
Right.
for children's books. So can you maybe in case the listeners don't really know, like the importance or maybe necessity that the reading age
Mm.
matches the age of the child, and kind of what that's about.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So that's what we call age appropriate and developmentally appropriate. And I want to add culturally appropriate. So National
Mm-hmm.
Association for the Education of Young Children, NAYC, proposed that, a long time ago, whatever early childhood practice, it has to be a developmentally appropriate, age appropriately, and, culturally appropriate. And it's so important for parents to find the right book for their kids. When you look at early child development, there's a Vygotsky series, scaffolding, right? When you
Mm-hmm.
try to help young children, you want to do things just right. You don't want to do too little. You don't want to do too much, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to understand your child's age, developmental level, and temperament, and provide the right amount of information. So for a 3-year-old child, let's say if it's a happy environment or toddler, it doesn't impact the child at all, then don't bring it up. Don't alarm the child. Don't feel like I have to tell you about COVID-19, right? Don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But if the child between age 3 to 5, the child clearly understand what's going on and have exposure to media, you want to find the book, the information, the knowledge, it's appropriate and the child can understand. So for example, in my book, I say the scientists are producing shot, right? So actually that's vaccine, but it shot makes sense to the child. So the language is like can age appropriate and can relate to the child's experiences. Then the child will understand the concept. So a lot of time parents feel frustrated. I told you 1,000 times. How can you not get it?
Mm-hmm.
But language are very abstract. Like we are talking, the sound go through my brain and it may just come out, right? Because of my, brain executive function, I can process, it makes sense. But a lot of time, abstract, if the language are too abstract, it didn't stay, it didn't make connection, it didn't make the child understand what's going on. But the pictures would. So if you have the appropriate text, language, message, and then you have the picture together presented to the child. At the beginning, the child may heavily rely on the picture, but eventually they will move on to the language, the sentence, and then make connection. And sometimes the kids would like to read the book over and over again. So that's the good sign because repetition is the best way of learning. And a lot of time it's therapeutic for the child to read through the book that will reassure them they feel safe. So that's why it's so incredibly important that book must be right for the certain age.
Definitely. Yeah. And I like how you said, rereading it over and over. Like in therapy, we see how it's like, it's their way of kind of processing.
Right.
Sometimes for some kids, it's like play, but in this case, like books or, I've heard
Yes.
parents say like, how come my child's watching the same movie over and
Right,
over,
right.
but sometimes it's just making sense of things. And that's like their kind of way to like think about it. And it's like a helpful tool.
Right.
Yeah. And I will say too, the pictures in the book are wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. They're really, really good. So out of curiosity, who could say, use the book, or I guess how would it be, the book be helpful to like the parent or caregiver, whoever's taking care of the child?
Sure. So when I create a book, and the intention really is just to help parents explain to their kids about COVID-19. So anyone in the world can use this book, as long as there's no commercial, a purpose reason. That's totally fine. Because to me, knowledge is for sharing. So I am glad a lot of people found the book like useful, and they can use the book to explain to their kids about what's going on, and they can comfort them. I think that's what my purpose was, just to share the book with as many people as possible. And I also realized a parent may not know how to use the book. So I actually created a lesson plan to teach parents about how to do that. As early childhood teachers, all the teachers know how to create a lesson plan, right? This is the objective. This is the procedure. You need these materials, and then you can expand your activity to art center, writing center, etc. Piece of cake. But for parents, they probably have no idea at all. So I actually did a lesson plan to inform parents what to do. This is the objective. And then you need this book. And then I even give them a set of questions for 3 to 5. You can pick 1 or 2 questions from this set. And then 5 to 8. There are different kind of questions here. So pick 1 or 2, question as a discussion starter, start the conversation. And then you read the book. And I also explain to parents, when you read this book, do not just read out loud. Make it a dialogical reading. That means when you read this book, you have a conversation, have a dialogue with your child. So look at the cover, look at the sentence, look at the pictures. Look, what do you think? Look, our streets actually are empty too. How do you feel? Oh, look at this picture. So from this process, you will be amazed. So for example, one of my friend read this book to her daughter, and then one of the sentences say, "Oh, we have to wash our hands with soap and water for more than 20 seconds." She's 4 years old. So she said, 20 seconds? Oh, so how long? So she has no idea at all, right?
Yeah.
So, and then like when they were talking about social distancing, the father said, "Do you know what that means?" So the child just like moved herself away from her father. So, is that good enough? And then, so this kind of thing will help the children, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the lesson plan. And two, and it's so interesting because I know you said you created some, additional questions, for discussion. And I feel like that's so going in line with, the developmental level of the child, because even though like it's not just, oh, you're reading, or you're going through this story, a lot of times it'll come back, either they're going to reread it or they're going to ask questions about the story, right? It's not like, oh, we're going through this book and there's an end, which sometimes parents may think, right? It's what they know, like, because especially since they're so curious, and this is, such a good book with so much information, it opens the door for dialogue and discussion. And I feel like with the young children, sometimes that happens anyways with things when we like hand them something, is there's so much interest in wanting to know more about, oh, what is this about? What do you think of this? How come this happened? Within the story. So I love that you have the lesson plan for the parents. That's great.
Yeah.
That's really great.
Yeah. The question actually started from the child's personal experiences. Like the first questions are, have you ever gotten sick? How did you feel? Did you go to school? Could you play with your friends, right? So start with something the child can relate, and then the child will say thing, and then the question then will gradually go to, like, do you understand what social distancing means? Do you miss your friend? What can you do to help? That kind of thing. And also, we cannot assume every parent understand how to talk with young children, right?
Yes, yes.
So, and especially when you look at cultural differences, it's clear Asian parents probably don't know, less likely, know how to talk with young kids,
Right.
acknowledge their emotion, things like that. It can be
Yes.
awkward. So it's better give them something to start the conversation.
I feel like too that's such a great opportunity for the parents because yeah, being Asian American, it's not always talked about or really there's some discomfort with the emotional aspect
Right.
sometimes of things, and sometimes there's more fallback on, I'm speaking from personal experience, but more like on like logic. Right. And it's like, great, let's look at more numbers, like, or, all these other things. And they picture, young kids being like, what does that mean? So it sounds like too, this book is a great way for parents of all different cultures really to get used to having these conversations like on an emotional level, but there's assistance because it's the book, it's the lesson plan kind of being guided through that. And it's such a great opportunity to really practice and see what that's like, which is huge, huge for the young children because this is something like they're going to feel the emotions. They're going to have these questions and they're going to come up anyway. So it's such a great experience for both the child and the parent to have. And, what we know too about like early development is that bond,
right.
And that attachment is something that carries with the child as they get older and into adulthood. We see the effects later sometimes.
Totally.
So I feel like there's so many like secondary, third, and like fourth benefits really from the book. Like there's so much else I think that could be taken and I think it would really, really enhance, just the relationship between the child and like their parent or caregiver.
Right, totally. I'm so glad you brought up attachment. That's so important. And I also want to break a cycle. There's something called cycle of silence. So typically when there's a disaster or something terrible happen, when parents look at their kids, they feel like my kids they look fine. They didn't say anything, so they are okay. And then the kids look at the parents, even though they are afraid, they feel like, oh, my parent didn't say anything, so I shouldn't ask any question. So the cycle just goes on. So it's called the cycle of silence. And I think it's very important that to break the cycle and then just to tell the kids, parents should be the one. I don't think the kids have the ability. So parents should be the person, like start the conversation. And it's so awkward if you are not used to talk to your kids. So strange. But the storybook, the social story can be a good starter, right? Just like an icebreaker. Hey, let's read the book together. What do you think? Yeah. And in my lesson plan, so I have expanded activity. For example, in the art center, they can draw the virus. They can, draw pictures. They can, and then for the writing center, they can write a letter to the virus, to the heroes, to the doctor, to the nurse. And then in the practical life, they can practice washing their hands, good hygiene. And then also for the science area, they can do paper and salt experiment to explain to them why you need to, use soap to wash your hands to make the virus go away. And in the end, I want the kids to make a wish. So Susan Freiman from NYC, she wrote an article about use storytelling to help young kids cope with the COVID-19. And then, so she introduced my book, and also she has one example about a 7-year-old girl. So she wrote the story to tell people about her COVID-19 experiences. She was very sad. She missed her friend, blah, blah, blah. And then she also said when the whole thing's over, she said the coronavirus will be over. And when it is over, I'm going to take an hot air balloon ride. So it's so cute, so hopeful, right?
Yeah.
So you need to, for the social story, I explain to the kids about what happened and also reassure their safety and redirect their attention to look at the positive side. So many people are helping and empower them about like what to do something, then they feel good about it. And I also want them to feel hopeful. So what do you want to do? What's your wish? And I think that's very important to put a hopeful, a thing in the child's mind. And that's the same thing for adults too. No one knows the social distancing, how long it's going to be, right? And no one know what's going to be going on, but it's always help that you have a hope in your mind.
I love that. Yeah, definitely. There's always importance, and also looking to the future, what, after, what do you hope for this? Or for adults, it's like, who do you want to be? Or in
Right.
the end, in the face of this difficulty, so
Right.
that's great. Yeah. So we're almost out of time. But is there anything else like you wanted the listeners to know?
Sure. I think, as I said earlier, knowledge is for sharing, and I know my social story works because the number of download almost 15K, and the book got translated into 15 languages, 3 more to come. And every day is so amazing. I receive email from educator, therapist, teachers around the world say, "Can I translate your book into my home language, Portuguese, Romania, or whatever?" So I say, sure thing. So I work with them. I give them the Word document, they translate that, and they send it back. I plug it into my book. I send it back for them to proofread, make sure it's right. And after that, they can just promote that in their country, encourage parents and kids to do that. So I really want audience to help spread the words and just help share the book. I am hoping the book can reach to as many children as possible. NAYC is working on it. We have a plan to make 100,000 copies, hard copy, and we want to send it to kids who living in the rural areas or without internet access. It's a granted. We assume everyone has internet. That's not true.
Right.
And they probably got hit even harder than, the kids who have internet access. So the message to the audience, if you can just help spread the words, share the resource, and we are working on an animation version of the book as well. So my colleague and her daughter helped me do the recording. That's fantastic, and I'm sure. And their voice is so soothing, and it's always so helpful to hear a child's voice. And then, it's incredible. So the message, to just share, help me share the book, the resource with more people. I want more kids in the world to have access to this book.
Definitely. And how could if the listeners are interested in the book, how could they go about getting it?
Sure. So they can email me. My email address is syen@fullerton.edu. So that's my personal email. They can email me, or they can go to this website. So we created a website, and that hosts the book, and with more than 14 language. People can go to https://sandybabaece.wixsite.com.
Great. If the listeners are, just interested in not just, the book, but if they have any questions, are you okay with them, emailing you at your fullerton.edu? Email? Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. And so what I'll do is, I'll put it in the information you just said. I'll put that in the show notes for the listeners so that they can easily get to it. And then we also have a website. So it's booksbetweensessions.com. And so I'll put that there too, where this will be playable, this episode. And that way they can easily find how to contact you and then click on the website for the book if they'd like to do it that way. So thank you so much, Jenny, for being here today. I'm so glad when I read the book, because I was one of those that, asked for, to be emailed the book and everything. And as soon as I read it, I thought, oh my gosh, this is so wonderful. Like I need to contact her so she can come on the show, especially right now. Yeah, no problem. Yeah. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Sure, you too. Bye-bye. Bye.